All right, it's Tuesday, April the 8th, 2025. I'm Dr. Grantham Taylor Hughes. For my show, The Grantham Taylor Hughes Show, with my co-host, Lena Suzanne Z. How you doing, Lena?
Very well, thank you, Grantham. How are you?
I'm I'm doing fine. Once we get the pre-talk jokes out of the way, probably people want to know the jokes, but well, that's the joke in itself because I blew the intro. I apologize completely. Anyway. So you're going to ask me a question, we wanted to talk about today?
Yeah, so a couple of videos ago, we briefly touched on the subject of Afianchetto. Afianchetto being one of the four pillars that supports your platform. Um,
Yeah, the political platform, which is the bankruptcy of the 1930 Geneva Convention, is the platforms is health, sovereignty, solvency, and Afianchetto. I say Afianchetto because the Fianchetto, as people know, is an opening move in chess with where you use the pawn. You have to use the pawn, but it makes the pawn expendable at that point. Albeit you don't necessarily have to sacrifice a pawn there, but people do sacrifice the pawn in the game of chess. So I called it a fianchetto for my purposes of the platform. And the fianchetto means that they'll sacrifice people for money. And I'm saying we should do an A fianchetto, not do that. Don't sacrifice people for money. Evacuate them from buildings when they knock them down in economic demolition. Because that's all they have now. They have police actions of I'm sorry, economic demolition because when buildings aren't turning a profit, they have to get rid of them quickly. See, so that's why the Twin Towers were really knocked down because it was an economic demolition because they were filled with MT103 credit instruments. They were filled up in the file cabinets and what have you. Because when in banking, when they send a SWIFT, so what I want to talk about this, it's okay because it's a truth be known. It's not really a big deal about this. But economic demolition needs to be done, but they need to evacuate everybody out of these buildings because it's a fianchetto. I don't agree with the fianchetto thing because they think people are expendable when they're in the way of profit. See, well, if people are in the way of money, then they make them expendable. And I disagree with that. That needs to change. And we need to, but when we do the evacuation, now it's revealing something that's going on there. See, they're concerned about the revelation of the truth, but I'm not concerned about it. That's why we're talking about it here, is that people above profit, we need to evacuate these issues. So what happens when we send a SWIFT in banking, what on the receiver side, you have a sender and a receiver, similar to the idea of the
can
fidelity ceremony.
can we
I'm
go
sorry,
can we
go
go
ahead.
back a bit? What's a Swift?
What's that?
What's a
Oh,
Swift?
Swifty. Oh, SWIFT. It means some extensive phraseologies, securities, wiring issues, or uh, um, faster than time, something silly like
Mhm.
that. So the SWIFT became the SWIFT. It's very fast in terms of when you send money to somebody. If you're sending money to your great Aunt Grace or something, you send it from a bank and a SWIFT, right? So you would be the sender and she would be the receiver. So what happens in the creation of money, what they do in the provisions of international banking provisions says that any bank that has a charter can create and maintain money. They don't really have to do the SWIFT process, but they don't understand their own banking provisions, which means essentially that you can just electronically enter any amounts of money if you have a bank charter. But what they do in practice now, and they've done this for hundreds of years, what they have is you have a sending bank and a receiver bank. And what the sending bank does, it sends a message to the receiver bank to create a certain amount of money. And it's usually a minimum of $100 million they send in what's called an MT103. Now, see, I lose the audience in the details of this whole thing, but and it's okay because again, it's the truth that we talk about here on my videos. Now, the problem with that is that the receiver on the receiver side, they copy the Swift about 100,000 times immediately, 100,000 different copies. And you say, was that illegal? Yeah, but that's the nature of money. Is there a lot of illegalities that go on, unlawful things or illegalities constantly?
Why are
And
they,
but
sorry,
I'm sorry.
why do they copy it thousands of times?
Well, to sell it, because the bankers sell these MT. They actually sell the MT 760, which is a tear sheet off the 103s, but they copy the 103s to make more tear sheets. So you see, there's like subroutines. All there's a lot of paper. So you can see there's a bunch of paper. Yeah, go ahead. There's hard copy. Go
So
ahead.
so when one bank sends money to another, they create this MT103. So that MT103 is like a certificate that represents a certain amount of money.
Yes, the MT 103 is created by the sender. But essentially but it's really the MT-103 is a message on that piece of paper because it has an amount and a date and everything, and in the middle of the paragraph it's like you were asking me what's on the trust certificate, and they just explain the fidelity ceremony. So the MT-103 is just explaining the process of the sender receiver, and they're saying in the message, go ahead and create $100 million. So when they send this message, that document becomes an MT-103, just like the trust certificate is a piece of paper. So when they send this paper to the receiver, they copy it 100,000 times, anywhere from 10,000 to 100,000 times. So now they have all this hard copy. So where does the hard copy go? Well, they have to file it away, and they file it in a clearinghouse in New York City. The clearinghouse now is Empire One, One World Trade Center, it's called, is a new clearinghouse, and now they're filling up file cabinets there as well. So you got to understand the Twin Towers and Building 7 were filled up with all this paper they didn't want out to the public. It was like the AQs, the European currency units, are held in Vatican City in a big vault. They called the ECU, was before the MT-103s at one time. They were the European currency units before the euro. Okay. So the ECU they didn't want on the street either because they're a minimum of $100 million also, or 100 million pesos, or not pesos, but anyway, 100 million British pounds sterling, whatever the denomination is. That's those AQs are now vaulted at Vatican City. The truth be known, a cardinal has a golden key around his neck, and that's mainly what the Vatican City does is protects this huge vault. The truth be known, but at the same time, they're not really currency. But they get nervous about the fact if they're on the street, this paper gets on the street and it gets filled so full of paper, they have no room for it, so they destroy it. Mainly, it's because they got to get rid of all this stuff. So that's why they got rid of the buildings because they were filled up. The file cabinets were jammed up with multi decillions of money. Yeah, go ahead.
So those MT103s aren't just receipts. Um, they can actually they can actually be transferred into money value.
Well, what happens now, because we're in a debt society, what they do is theoretically now, because Goldman Sachs was issuing 103s a while back, and I'm wondering, you can't do that lawfully, but they do anything they want to do. And it's okay, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to get in trouble with this whole thing. It's just the truth, and most people don't understand what I'm talking about anyway, so it doesn't matter. But anyway, so the idea that the practice in theory, or should be in practice, is the MT-103 is put into a vault because it's the only credit instrument. It's a credit instrument. And then off the 103, they issue an MT-760, which is a debt instrument. Okay, so therein lies when it proves the bankruptcy that your debt instrument is MT-760, and then they convert the 760s into country currencies, which are all debt now too, because we go down to the Federal Reserve note, the dollar bill, which is a lowest level of the amounts. Then the dollar bill shows the Federal Reserve note on the top of the dollar bill, you see, because that's the proves the bankruptcy. The note is a debt instrument. So the debt instruments are utilized in the banking system, the MT-760s, and they trade those. And what they do in banks nowadays, if you have a lot of money, like let's say you had a business, you were a tire company, right? And you retired and you had several $100 million. What the bankers will approach you and maybe sell you an MT-760 for 30 million out of your your money that you saved after retirement. So what they'll do is they'll sell you $100 million piece of paper, MT760, for 30 million in cash. So what you do, you spend your lifetime trying to recoup that $70 million. You'll never do it because you can't really trade it because that wasn't the issue. It's kind of like the stock market. The stock market is to raise money for corporations because they create the bonds, the stocks, to create expense money for the company. So they sell it to the brokers and they pay for it and they get this big expense account. Like I was working for a broker in California a long time ago. It was a boutique underwriter, they call it, because we would do uh, initial public offerings, IPOs, for around $10 million, okay, which is very small. So when you do the larger IPOs, the corporations have expense money. So all they're really doing is selling this paper to a market, which is a stock market, and then they sell it to people and they speculate on it, making money with the profit. The commissions by the brokers make a commission on it. There's a good movie called Trading Places with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd, which explains this a little bit. It's a very good explanation for it. So
Okay.
the truth be known, it really wasn't for to make money on the stock market, is because you have to have a lot of money to make money on the stock market. Unless you're a speculator every day, a lot of people would argue this point because I made a lot of money on the stock market. Well, yeah, but you're speculating every day. You're married to the stock market. You're probably spending 8 hours a day speculating, when in reality, all you have to do is 9 minute yantra, okay, which
But
is easy. Yeah, go ahead.
so if there were lots of these MT103s in filing cabinets, and why would they destroy them if they have value?
Well, there's too many of them. See, they fill up. They fill up. Think about how many papers that is. They swift millions of swifts, so 100 million swifts every day. Where do they put all that paper? Well, in 20 million square feet of building in file cabinets. When I was in the Twin Towers in 1999, they had a bunch of file cabinets in these empty office spaces, and they used to have placards in the glass windows. You could see a placard. It was about $1,000, up to $1 to $10,000 a square foot. Nobody can afford that. So that's why the Twin Towers are empty of people, but they had file cabinets in the place filled up with the papers, with the medium term notes, or I'll call it MTNs, are filled up with the paper. They had no more space after a while, so they torched it and started over again with One World Trade Center. Like Building 7 was filled up with paper too. It was an auxiliary building they had to knock down too because it was jammed with paper too as well. I mean, this is really funny stuff when you think about it. It's just silly stuff. But see, they need to talk about economic demolition to get people away from the buildings when they knock them down and not sacrifice the people, lying about them. 'Cause see, the problem is it's not a contrived lie in the marketplace. They just don't understand it. So they make all these mistakes saying, when they knock the buildings down, they don't talk about economic demolition because they don't know what that means. But that's what's going on. I explained it. There's nothing wrong with that because they need to do it. It needs to be done. So I'm not against it, but I'm against the fact of when people are in the way, evacuate them. But see, they don't want to explain this because they're afraid of the bankruptcy getting to the New York Times or getting to the Associated Press, and they don't want to explain that because they don't want hysteria in the streets. See, albeit we can talk about the bankruptcy privately, but even if we go to mass media with my message, by that time it'll probably be a golden age anyway. Yeah, in terms of it, the truth be known will be in the knowingness arena, and people want my truth because it's their truth, it's your truth. I'm not talking about anything that's not true to your own self. See, I remember we talk about things on these calls that we're talking about things that people are thinking about because I make proper conclusion. When I make precise conclusion and draw the two premises in a decent conclusion, that's how people think. They think in proper conclusion. So when I do that, it's parallel to a person's thoughts. So when I'm saying I'm voicing what you're thinking about, it's close. Let's put it that way. He said
Mhm.
as he left, I'll see you later. Bye.
Mhm.
Just kidding.
Any other examples of this profit over people that's going on?
Well, I mean, just like going to work, people are making a lot more profit in terms of what they pay to people. They're not giving you the entire profit. So that's a profit over people too as well. And they say that prostitution is the oldest profession. Well, what do people do when they go out and get a job? They prostitute themselves to the man, to the employer, right? So they're paying you a pittance and they make a tons of money from you in terms of the profit when they sell things. They give you a percentage of what they're taking, not giving you the entire principal. See, that makes profit over people. You see what I mean? So that's an economic demolition of yourself in terms of prostituting yourself to the employer. But in reality, you should be paying yourself with the yantra. You should be creating your own employer and not having to go out to a third party employer. You become your own employer by duplicate the yantra outside of you becomes your employer. It pays you. I mean, remember we showed on one of the other videos that people found bags of money on their front porch after doing yantra and whatnot, because
Mhm.
the money's going to come to you some way. They had this group years ago that were going out to people that they had left money in insurance companies, and they had this a credit with these different companies, but they didn't know they left this money with these companies, and this individual wrote this book on, well, you can go out to people and explain they left this money with a grocery store, and there was an extra $500 they left at the counter routine. So they were finding this money for people. See, so that's another thing too. All of a sudden, you get a letter from somebody, a $10,000 check that says, well, we've established that this particular money was sent by the International Postal Company to the corporation of IBS, and you're entitled to this free fall money that's coming to you now. Makes no sense, right? And none
Mhm.
of it makes any sense because that's what the bankruptcy is about. They can't keep track of anything. And then all those huge amounts of money that are created everywhere. I mean, the banking institution creates it by just plugging it in to electronic entry. Okay. So they're just creating money out of thin air, as they say. But in reality, it's not thin air. They put it down on a piece of paper called a medium term note. You see? So yeah. So go ahead,
But
please.
then it doesn't make sense that they would want to I just can't get my head round the fact that they would then want to destroy that money. And then people are in debt, to banks and with their mortgages and things like that, when behind the scenes they're destroying loads of money.
Well, yeah, because they don't want the papers out to the people because they don't want you to have $100 million in your hand to be able to go to the bank and cash it. You see what I mean? But it wouldn't work that way anyway, but they're nervous about it. So when they fill it all up, and there's no space anyway left, they don't have any more space, so they got to get a new building to get rid of the old building and that's why they created the new clearinghouse called Empire One, because they're filling it up with paper too now as we speak. You see what I mean? Fast and furiously, because this is a really big business that's going on. We're not going to stop it anytime soon. And that's just the nature of banking. And well, we might, in terms of in the golden age, if the medium of exchange goes away, then banking will go away. And my banking buddies would be upset with me. But Grantham, you're the top banker. It means you need to go away. Okay, I'm leaving. See you later. Just kidding. I like that. My laugh sounds like an old man because I am an old man. Let's just face it.
Relative, how are you the top banker?
Well, my family's the Barclays Bank. They control the bank, but I'm a LCMD. I'm a Lord Managing Director, Consulting Managing Director. I'm an English Lord and a Prussian Baron. You see, so I'm a consulting managing director, and yeah, so that's just the nature of the bankers. They don't know what they're doing either. They bring in a legal department that doesn't know what they're doing. I wrote those legal provisions many years ago. I mean, you're talking about I did the two revisions of the Bauer Foundation. I wrote those provisions. I was a contract lawyer. They call it a solicitor in England. I wrote provisions, legal provisions. It's stodgy legalese routine, but puts you to sleep in the first two sentences. You don't want to read the stuff. It was
Mhm.
putting me to sleep too. That's why I'm talking now. I don't want to write it anymore.
Mhm.
Anyway, so I knew this very well and I was articulating, and so I became the voice of reason. The voice of reason. Grantham Taylor Hughes, the voice of reason. Okay, thank you very much.
So I'm curious what your banking family think of your opinions when it comes
Well,
to
they don't
these.
like my opinions, trust me. They go, why? And actually, they do like my opinions, but they don't like the fact they're trying to give me money. When I try to get money from them, it doesn't work, you know. Let's put it that way. I need probably about $3 trillion to create the prototype, the light speed vehicle in the Omnivergence Institute. And it's okay to reveal it. Nobody's going to duplicate it anyway because I'm the only one that knows how to do it. I really wish I wasn't that way, but I haven't duplicated that concept either because people, I don't understand. But it's okay. I'm self-effacing. I say, remember this last video we're doing, and I'm talking about this stuff. Don't pay any attention to it all at all. It's all rubbish. But I still need you to subscribe. I'll make you laugh, right? Remember I told you about a website I was going to create years ago? We just want your money, give it to us. And they said,
Mhm.
well, what are you giving us? Well, I'm giving you comedy. I'm making you laugh. You're paying the comedian.
So,
Now you're paying a comedian too today, right? Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
so with your prototype, Grantham, would it not work to try to do a pilot project, make it on a really, really small scale for, on the cheap, and then if you could demonstrate that
I
it
like that on the cheap, right?
yeah. And then if you can demonstrate that your technology works, you can then go to the banking people and show them evidence here. This is we did it on a small scale, it works. Now can you please give us the money?
It's a nice idea. I like that. But prototype is very expensive to go through all that rigor to create stuff. I mean, it's extremely expensive. Research is like a sump pump for money. You're dumping it into a hole. So I tell them I'm just doing research with my banking buddies. They say, what about development? Well, development might not be for 20 years. They don't want to hear that, see? But when you do pro formas or business plans in Japan or in China, they'll actually do a 20-year business plan. In America or in England, they only have 5-year business plans. So you have to lie on that. There's no way you can make that kind of money in 5 years, but you have to lie to be able to get some funding to get loans from banks. So business plans in the East are true to form because it might take you 20 years to create a really decent net asset on your company. She said, yeah, go ahead.
I was just thinking, you could do with the backing of some tech giant. Do you know some firm that's already established and is producing modern technology and is interested in your idea and advancement?
Well, do you think I haven't talked to people about this? I've talked to people for years. The problem is they don't understand, you see. And then the bankers want performance. They want a company that's already established. In other words, if you go in to get a bank loan, you already have to have money to get a decent bank loan. So you just don't get $100 million without having several $1 million already. It's like Donald Trump started out with $3 million and he became a billionaire. But yeah, if you had an influx of expense money with that type of money, you can parlay it. But if you have no money, then what do you, oh, I got to get a job. But you have to have experience here, sir. You can't get a job. Well, how do I get experience if I don't have a job? It's all paradox. These things don't make any sense. Most of our life makes no sense. And I'm trying to make a little sense out of stuff, but I don't make any sense either, right, folks? You have no idea what I'm talking about, and neither does Grantham.
But we
That's
have
the
fun
truth.
doing it. We,
I'm
we,
sorry.
we have fun doing it.
Yes, we have fun doing it. If I make you laugh, that's the most important part. I fill your day with laughter. You can laugh after you stop hearing us talk on the. Oh, it was so hilarious. I have no idea what he was talking about, but he was so funny. So truth be known, Grantham is a clown, like Patch Adams. I should put that big bubble thing on my nose. He cut that tube off in the hospital and put the big red nose and became Patch Adams. He did some good work with that, but he got in trouble with the AMA too. They didn't like because he was too jocular about things. He wasn't serious about. We need to be serious, and there's serious health. But but I'm saying when I turned 50 many years ago, I I waxed ESP. I started practicing ESP. And you know what ESP is, don't you?
Extrasensory perception.
No, 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 no. It's extremely silly people. And of course, I'm the top one, folks, as you know. Yes, Grantham's a clown. So
So,
before you condemn me and everything, I'll do it myself. I'll condemn me.
does it happen to everyone when they turn 50? Do they get this ESP?
Yeah, they get ESP when you turn 50. Just trust me. You look at the world as a big joke. This particular
Uh-huh.
video. I was talking about your body being a body brine factory. We create brine and we can disseminate brine everywhere in our creation. So brine will fix what ails you. It'll make you younger. I'm on a track to become like I used to look like in those pictures that I show in my youth. You see all those young pictures of me.
Hmm.
I was about 20 years old in that picture, I think, something like that.
Yeah, no, I was just asking, do you have any feedback on the brine and how it's working for you?
Well, I think it's because I've been on I started raw veganism in my late 50s, and I've been on a rejuvenation thing for about 18 years. And I think it might take a while to rejuvenate. People talk about you can rejuvenate at any time, but I think when you can get back to looking like you're maybe 35 or 40, then you can maintain that look. See, so the brine is a youth movement as well. Plus, it will help in your expansion of your empire, and because everything is made out of water, like we're in this water bubble, and it goes up to the sun. It goes up to the sun portal. This MDC, we call it the Macy dust concept. It's a membrane, a bubble membrane. So the brine works with, we're doing it anyway. See, we're using the humidity, we're using the brine. So we might as well be conscious of using the brine. And that's why if you utilize the brine and you program the brine, even allopathic medicine, this isn't stuff that's unknown even to the standard medical practice. They say you can program water. So if you could program water when you're drinking water, you can program the saliva in your body, which the Taoist monks call jade, Jade. And so if you can program the jade in your body, which is saliva, I call it body brine, BB, right? Body brine. If you can program that, you can direct it to any pain in your body or project it to any manifestation. You want something in your life, to send it brine. You want to change something because it's your creation. So it's all the juices of your body. Your body is just one big body brine. It's a genetic brine. The gene is a water droplet, so we're a water droplet. So utilize that water and the manifestation of the brine. It comes from your own body. It's not coming from outside the body and gross water. Like when you're drinking water, you're drinking water in a water glass. That's you're ingesting the water, but this particular water you're creating from your own body juices, okay? And then it works in concert with the humidity in the air. When you breathe in, the humidity becomes the body brine and the juices. The truth be known that the humidity in the air, that particular humidity, that moisture turns into the body brine around us. And then anything we eat turns into the liquidity of the body brine. This is good stuff. I like this.
Yeah.
I'm glad we're recording it.
Uh,
See, so the body brine is very important. So the humidity is probably the main source of the body brine because it's the moisture in the air. Because if you didn't ingest the gross water, you're still living on the humidity as we speak. Like I'm not drinking water right now. I don't have an IV stuck in my arm where you have a saline solution coming into your body. So what happens when you're breathing, that humidity makes your manifestation because in the air you have the nitrogen, which is the only mineral solid in air, and then you have oxygen which you breathe out. So when you're breathing in, you're converting the humidity to brine. You see, so in reality, the humidity is the focal point of the brine, where the gross water is a confidence builder to drink that because you're not confident there's enough humidity to maintain your health or to, you see, I mean, we're not really into the breatharianism. We don't understand that the air has enough humidity, hydration to maintain our
mm,
body. So we drink water. It's kind of an insult to our intelligence, drinking the gross water because really don't know how to use brine and humidity properly. So you have a third element of gross water to ingest that in megahydration. So
Mm,
megahydration is just a competence thing. It's like
mm,
pharmaceuticals are a competence thing too. So when I talk about megahydration, I'm insulting you.
mm. That's interesting. It all comes back down to concepts again, Grantham, doesn't it? Because we haven't had this concept of the humidity in the air being important. We've become reliant on drinking gross water, or we believe that's what we need to do to get enough water in the body.
That's right. Get enough hydration. You think you need to drink we call it gross water because I got to get situated here. The gross water is because what philosophers talk about in gross manifestation, the word gross is just the hard manifestation. They call it gross, not meaning it's negative. So when I say gross, it's a philosophical term.
So when
Right. So we're not really focusing on the humidity as being relevant to that.
uh,
There's no relevance in humidity in our workaday world, in our vernacular. But I'm trying to bring relevance to it. It's very important.
so when it comes to breathing and the humidity, is it enough to just change the concept, or do we then need, is it recommended to do practices that involve certain breathing practices?
Well, they have these prana practices in the Far East, but I'm saying that's okay. You can do that. There's a concept of preservation that took it's creative preservation that took out the Shiva and the Hindu teaching talk about the inhalation and being destruction of the Shiva, but my Lama teachers talked about it being another Brahm in terms of creation, like when they have the cycle of breath is when you exhale that is the creation. They call that Brahm as a creator. And then when you hold the breath out, it's a preserver, which is a Vishnu. That's preservation. Like right now, when you see me, we're in a preservation time of the air. I was talking about in the Hindu language or Hindu concept of the Shiva. The Shiva is when you inhale, that's a destruction. Okay. So what the Lama teachers explained was in reality, there should be a creation there and eliminate the Shiva in that concept. It's called preservation, creative preservation. And that's how the superannuated live long in immortality because they practice preservation and not just preservation with the inhalation being a destruction in our breathing. That's interesting, isn't it?
Very. So how do we practice that? If
Well,
do
you're
we?
doing it naturally anyway, but remember we bring a concept to it. We explain it and now it becomes clear about what you're doing. See, and
Hmm.
then you're immediately doing, remember how you said automatically we manifest our concepts when, especially when we're consciously talking about it, it's exciting because then it's knowledge. You gain knowledge through our videos that you may not have had before. And then you can always repeat this if you don't get it right away. And when you get it's very exciting. I'll say interesting. And in the East, they call it enlightening. You get enlightenment with the whole thing. So that's a great joy within yourself because when you gain knowledge and become aware of something, it's uplifting. It makes you feel good. See, that's what we're here about, making you feel good. Grantham, the feel good guy.
So Grantham, you're saying that with the in-breath there's creation, and with the out-breath there's creation. There's no destruction.
Correct. It's preservation, creative preservation. There's
Uh-huh.
there's two Brahms, there's two Vishnus. There's inner Vishnu, there's an inner Vishnu and an outer Vishnu. There's an outer Brahm and an inner Brahm. See, it just goes in a cycle, a spinning cycle of air, and it maintains your portal life, the portality of your life, proper mortality that we talk
Mm.
about so much on the calls. Okay.
Thanks a lot, Grantham.
You're welcome.
And thank you to everyone watching today. Please share, like, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Bye for now.